Good evening, one and all. Alright, audio is operational. We are off to the races. But before we do that, I want to change up our ambience. Let's go over to Castercraft and go over to Silverado and stream activities. Alright, what tonight? Go with more Skyrim. I really enjoy this one. I need to get some more of the Skyrim music and add it. Well, let us now proceed with some more art.
Roger, roger.
All right. So this one has been coming along quite well. I'm at the point where I'm just adding details. And things like this, where it's kind of trash that's in the background that adds some detail to these piles. So it's, you know, doesn't seem flat or seem like a tarp. And I saw somebody do this concept a couple of years back. It was actually an interesting idea. It was just a second. He was building a landscape full of trash, and he had a lot of neat sort of Easter eggs he put out there. And I want to try and incorporate some of those ideas. So I'm just going to start drawing kind of whatever comes to mind or whatever shapes start to form. Like right now, I'm just kind of throwing something out there and seeing if I can make something out of it. Is there a hotkey for this? Nope. Not that I know of. Greetings there, Schwartz Bricks. How are you doing this evening? We're adding more detail to the trash pile that's in the background. And so that means I just kind of got to put some random items out there so it looks like junk. And then hopefully it will just, make it so it doesn't look like the droid is sitting on top of a tarp. So right now I'm just starting with a simple panel. It's going to be out here. And then I will try and do something that's maybe a bit more sophisticated for the next part. I was mentioning earlier that I saw a guy do something like this a couple years ago, and he did really well. He came up with all sorts of interesting ideas. Right now, I just want to try and get the kind of color palette figured out, and then keep adding to it, make it a little bit easier as kind of go along here. How long have you been doing art for? Well, as of tonight, just about 4 minutes or more. In terms of for this piece of artwork, I have officially crossed the kind of the 10-hour mark for it of a hardcore painting, because there's been a lot of kind of days where I didn't really get a whole lot with it. In terms of art in general, I've been drawing since the age of really 3, and I keep improving a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm a self-taught artist for the most part. I learned through tutorials, and I've had some years where I've gotten a chance to do some really sophisticated pieces, and then there's been a couple years where it just feels like there's a lull in projects. This is a year where there's a whole lot of projects kind of back to back. And so I've gotten a lot more practice this last year than many years in the past. Over the past. I have no idea what sort of droid this is supposed to be. I just want to be interesting. A piece of trash left by the Jawas. You should add some little bugs or creatures in the dirt or sand. Ooh. That is a good idea. Looks like Choppa from Rebels. It kind of does, doesn't it? Well, now we know what happened to him. Garbage. You know, one of my favorite brushes is actually the airbrush. There's a lot of neat things you can do with it. And you could say it has all the same features as maybe some of the watercolor brushes in this program, but I still think that it gives a look and feel that is a little bit easier to control. Now, it's not very good for when you want to kind of match something in the background, so you really do have to use brushes to try and help blend things together. But I've had pretty good success with it. Greetings there, Jersey. How are you doing? So here's a question. What are folks' favorite Star Wars character? What character do you think has one of the best presence in the franchise? Admiral Akbar. I love the political posters that people were doing of Akbar, where it said, "Vote for Akbar, he knows when it's a trap." I mean, correction. Admiral Akbar, who always knows when
it's a trap!
Definitely R2-D2 because he's nice and friendly or Vader. Darth Vader definitely stands out to a lot of folks. A very commanding presence. Notice that I'm not making these very bright. I'm making them kind of a muted color. And so thus they don't stand out a whole lot, and that's going to help kind of keep it from trying to hog the spotlight. So it'll still be there, but it's not going to be in your face sort of thing, and so you lose track of the subject. Do you enjoy all the new Star Wars movies and series done by Disney? No, not entirely. Now, there's been moments that I've actually enjoyed it. We actually did a couple of reviews. Both me and a guy by the name of Rolling Chairs did some deep dives into the Ahsoka series, into The Mandalorian, and reviewed it and kind of came away with a score for each episode. I thought the scoring system was pretty unique. It was, and we actually came away with the realization that some of the episodes were actually far better than people were giving it credit for. And now here's an example. Before the end of the series of Ahsoka, we actually thought that it was setting up to create basically the very first time that we actually looked at Star Wars and said, this is like pinnacle Star Wars lore, because they were building up Thrawn. They did a really good job with him. It was an incredible presentation, but we came to the very last episode and it all fell apart. And so the rest of the series got a pretty high score. We came to the last one and got a very bad score. But all of it together made it kind of actually still a positive score overall. And so it was an interesting way to go through it and mathematically figure out where it fell. The Ahsoka series is the closest I came to actually liking a lot of the new stuff that Disney has made. Everything else I have cringed at because it is lore killing. Admiral Akbar couldn't sense a trap in The Last Jedi. It was I've argued ever since I first saw that show that they should have had Admiral Akbar be the one who sacrificed himself. He should have said, he should have gone up to the Admiral's bridge and said, everyone get off ship. And I actually wrote like the kind of the plan of how this story would unfold, because you would start off with a Calamari species and build them up and incorporate them into the New Republic, and then you have Admiral Akbar and several other of his kind helping to give everyone a chance to escape, not to destroy the Imperial fleet, but to set a trap. And so he turns around, and you can't be so tacky as to say this is a trap. Now, ironically enough, they did the same sort of thing for How It Should Have Ended. How It Should Have Ended actually addressed this concept. So it's like, they already got it. But anyway, I think they could have built that one up and actually made it to where he had a heroic death, and it actually would have made more sense for them escaping. And by the way, if you've ever seen like behind the scenes, Admiral Akbar was, the actor who did it was in tears when he did his last line because he felt so worthless. And they just mistreated so many people. Darn you, Disney, for being cruel because you don't care about anything other than money. Hey, that's an idea. Let's put some rusted Mickey ears down here. It's such a shame. I really miss the old Disney. They did so many things right, and Bob Iger killed it in one fell swoop. The droid is looking like D-Zero from Rise of Skywalker. I forgot about that droid. They did good with Rogue One movie. I know a lot of people liked it. There's some problems with that one. And here's the reason why. Okay. There are some elements to the story that get nullified because of Rogue One. Now, granted, it did better than a lot of the other Disney stories. But I think because it's in the spotlight of being against all the bad ones, we give it a higher score than it deserves. I thought initially that I liked Rogue One, and then I realized I really, really, really didn't. Here's the reason why. It destroys a lot of the lore surrounding the build-up to A New Hope. It introduces a lot of concepts that change the meaning of everything Disney did moving forward and how fans saw the prequels. It is in Rogue One that we get the idea that the Force is a little bit different than what the movies have beforehand been presenting. The Force behaves kind of more like, let me put it this way. There is a Force-sensitive character in the story. He's not a Jedi, and they make it very clear for that. But he's Force-sensitive. If he's Force-sensitive, he's basically a Jedi. There are only two Jedi at that point. There is Obi-Wan, and there is Yoda. The Force was balanced. 2 Sith and 2 Jedi. A New Hope comes along, and it tips the balance. So now there's 3 Jedi. But Obi-Wan dies, so there's still 2 Jedi. And it is that way until Return of the Jedi. And then Yoda passes, as does Darth Sidious. And then there's just 1 and 1, both Skywalkers. And then Darth Vader passes. And then there's only Luke. The Force has been not only balanced, but reset. There's some things with how they address the prequels that ruin that. There's also some other characters like, Bugali. They build up this big to-do about there being this creature that they torture people with. It's like, wait a minute. This is supposed to be the remnants of the Republic, and you guys are basically torturing people? That doesn't look good. And by the way, they don't get any information off of it. So there's a lot of plot holes in their story. There's also stuff surrounding the Death Star. Now, they did some really neat things with the Death Star. But there's a lot of things also that ruin the point of why Princess Leia is escaping to begin with. Now, I've heard some people say it makes her look all the tougher because she's saying, hey, I don't know what was happening when she was captured beforehand in Rogue One. That makes absolutely no sense because it destroys a lot of their motivations. Up until then, it looks like they're like the Empire's just being bullies. When you look at from Rogue One, it looks like the Empire is actually trying to be the good guys in a sense. There's a great breakdown on YouTube that really dives into this, and I highly suggest it. It's like I think if I remember right, it's Rogue One isn't as good as you think, and it was very, very good. Well thought out, and I share a whole lot of the views that guy had. Now, did it have good elements compared to the rest of what Disney has done? Yes, but that's the problem. You can't say that. You can't. Think about it like this. Somebody comes up and punches you in the face, and you think, ow, that's terrible. That hurts. Ha ha ha. They punch you again. You're like, now that really hurts. They punch you again. What is going on with that? Then they come up and slap. Oh, that slap was really good. It's like, wait a minute. It's still designed to insult. It's still designed to tear down. It takes the lore and throws it out the window. The Death Star had a flaw. It wasn't supposed to be sabotaged. It was supposed to be a flaw in the designs, like anything. Anyway, watch the video. It sums it up perfectly. I was so confused at the ending, thinking Akbar died in the battle there. Yeah. Okay, but the Darth Vader hall scene was a masterpiece. It was very cinematic, and it had a lot of people in the theater jumping up and down, excited. They were, everyone was impressed by that scene. But again, if Darth Vader had just done that, why did A New Hope begin the way that it did? Here's the thing to remember. If they had just escaped the Empire, the ship disconnects and flies off, and the Empire is pursuing it. Why didn't they just destroy it? They were trying to capture it. Why didn't they just destroy it? They don't think that the plans are on the ship. They know. And what's more, it came from a battle. That means they're combatants. They should be destroyed. But instead, they capture it. There's a lot of logic that gets thrown out the door. And here's the thing. George Lucas had some flaws in how he told stories, but he was also a genius in other ways. One of the things he understood is history and how, and he would have a lot of things that would mirror history. And so when you see things, you might think, oh, that's not really logical, but then you hear about it years later that there's a moment in history that kind of justifies why he went about things the way that he did. Disney is no such genius. Can they make exciting scenes? Yes. Action scenes don't make story. There's a fan-made film out there about Darth Maul. It's like The Apprentice or something like that. It is a long fan film, of which only 5 minutes are actually story. That's not a story. That's not well made. That's fans getting hyped over action. You might as well watch the WWE. We watch a story because it makes the battles have meaning. When you come to Revenge of the Sith, the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin makes sense. It is long because you're actually seeing the culmination of the prequels. Everything is all about that culmination. And so when you come to the end, it carries weight to it. You come to the end of the fight, and there is tragedy, there is suffering, and it makes sense why that happened. You come to the end of Endor, and a lot of it, you're like, you don't have the proper build-up. Instead, it's all about trying to be cool, which again isn't terrible, but it has to be done in the right way. Otherwise, it kind of falls flat. Now, I have not seen Endor. I can definitely say that. After, I don't remember what show it was, but after one of the miniseries, I just tuned out of Disney. I did not watch it unless people actually requested that I watch it, which we only did that once. Well, sorry, we did that twice. People asked for us to review the most recent season of The Mandalorian, as well as Ahsoka. So me and Chairs both got a subscription to Disney, and we watched it. And then but there wasn't a request for Endor because the audience was fairly small at the time, and there really wasn't much need for it. Everybody else was reviewing it, and I didn't want to sound like I was trying to grift on it. So we let it slide, and we didn't do it. I kind of wish that we had done, because I think that we could have had a really interesting review that would have taken place. But it was not a good time to try and pull that off. Now, there was a very in-depth, detailed analysis that we did of Ahsoka. And during that are a lot of the problems that you see with every Disney product. It's all very much driven by an agenda. And sometimes the agenda makes sense. It really does. Most of the time, it doesn't. And in fact, it can get downright insulting, a lot of the things that Disney does. And so it can make you irritated and makes you think, well, what was the point of all that? One of those examples was in the, there is a character that gets, trying to remember the characters' names at this point. Oh yeah, when they arrive at Dathomir, was it Dathomir? The place that was outside the galaxy? That was a really good build-up. And when they arrive, the characters have drama that starts to appear in their group. The drama comes out of nowhere. You're like, hey, you guys should be focused on the stuff that's happening here and now, but the writers have things that are kind of kitsch lines that they're supposed to give. And it is a tactic that Disney has for building up fake drama. I'm not a fan of that sort of stuff, but you will see that in the movies here and there. It's not super common in the movies, it's more common in the TV show, but it still will appear. I hope the Ahsoka Season 2 and Obi-Wan... I hope there's Ahsoka Season 2 and Obi-Wan Season 2. Some people are really looking forward to that. I will say that. I'm not. But it doesn't mean that other people have to have the same frustrations I have with Disney. And that was the thing that we kind of came away with at the end of Ahsoka. Which, by the way, those recordings are actually still on YouTube. YouTube, or is it Rumble? I'm forgetting when we did the when we started Restream, because that was the time when it all started to change. But that was the takeaway that we had. Some people are going to be big, big fans of what Disney's doing. That's fine. Not everyone's supposed to enjoy things the exact same way. And that was our big revelation. Rolling Chairs was somebody who really enjoyed a lot of what was being done. I was not. We were both able to give our arguments as to why. And it came from different perspectives. And there really is a generational divide. Again, that's fine. If you have a reason for why you enjoy something, there's nothing wrong with this Disney Star Wars. Nothing like majorly wrong. People can enjoy it. Now, I wish that they would have done something different with Obi-Wan, because I really think that they could have done something really, really cool with Obi-Wan. But it would have been a completely different direction, and would have actually given weight as to why the Jedi had to wait for Luke to actually mature. The story that I was trying to figure out was, why is it that new Jedi and new Sith were not appearing? And in the fan fiction that I was writing, I came to a conclusion of what would be the reason for that. And I wish that would have been a focus of their story. But then again, that's just because, I had a vested interest in it being a certain way. Other people were perfectly fine with it. That's fine. It was a personal Vader ship in Rogue One, and beginning of the New Hope. He wanted to fight personally. Haha, it's not like the regular crew of his Star Destroyer made many decisions without him. I don't think even simple stormtroopers wanted to storm a ship full of armed rebels twice with him. Haha, it just shows how cocky Vader was. You know, one of the big challenges? Disney doesn't have anything we can compare with anymore. Have you noticed that? They've won in many ways because we don't have anything to compare to. And so thus, they can change things now. They can go more extreme if they so desire, because they have been successful in the small things. There's a guy that I know who is a big, big fan of the new Disney Star Wars. And he used to not be. He used to be very much against Disney Star Wars. But it changed over time. Pretty soon it became the only thing he was familiar with. If he wanted Star Wars, he had to choose Disney. He wasn't willing to go to something else. And nobody else was really offering an alternative. Disney has, and other companies have kind of made it very difficult for new people to begin their creative journey. In fact, if you see somebody who has created a product that is selling well, look into their finances and you'll find out that they're actually secretly wealthy, or they're secretly on the in. There's a guy that I'm aware of that actually was a pretty big name, and so thus when he was bragging about how he broke into the industry, it sounded all well and good until you found out that he actually was a millionaire before becoming successful. It's very, very rare for a common man to get into the industry. You have to be from the inside in many, many cases. over time, we start to eventually accept the way things are. Disney's hit that point where a lot of people, kind of like my friend, has finally decided that, okay, well, we're not getting any other form of Star Wars. I don't want to abandon Star Wars, and so he's accepted it. Well, I don't blame him for that. Honestly, I don't. I can understand. He's wanting Star Wars, and it's not there. So he's going to accept what is there. But there was some folks that invited him onto a stream. And when he got on, he thought they were going to ask him about what he liked about the new stuff. Instead, they took that opportunity to tear into him and to humiliate him publicly. Now, I didn't agree with him on his stances, but I really didn't like how they were treating him. That made me angry. I can disagree with somebody, and I don't have to be cruel to them. I can be considerate. I can still disagree, but I don't have to be harsh. That goes for all of us. We don't need to necessarily stoop to the level that a lot of other folks do. We can still say, you know what, sure, we can all enjoy this, and we don't have to demonize one another in the process. You know, one of my favorite characters from the new Star Wars is one that I didn't think I was going to like. It was Ben Solo. At first, I didn't like him, but as the story went on, I liked him more and more. There was a moment when I was watching Rise of Skywalker that I almost thought I knew how the story was going to end, and if it had gone that way, I would have been happy, but it didn't, and that's what made it all the more frustrating. When I first saw the movie, there was laughter in the audience. People at that point had given up. They're like, okay, fine, Disney is going to do things, we'll just mock it along the way. And people were heckling. But you know, there was a brief moment where Ben kind of made it look like both he and Rey were going to be unique because they were breaking how the Force operated. And thus, it was going to set the world on a new path, the whole storyline on a new path. Now, I'm not a fan of necessarily doing that, but there's some times where I'm like, you know, that would actually be interesting to explore. What if they kind of broke the rules? And what would that look like? Do they have a plot line for it? You break rules for a reason. And if you do it well, people will really enjoy the storyline. So I thought for a moment that they were going to break the rules and that they were going to introduce a whole new kind of way to see the Disney franchise. I thought they were going to tie it all together. And the way that I thought they were going to do that was that they were going to have... I thought for certain they were going to have Ben and Rey actually marry. No, I'm not saying that I was part of the Reylo group. But I thought what they were going to do was they were going to actually show that it was going to be the family of Skywalker moving forward, and that Rey was going to be a part of that. Thus, kind of making a little bit more sense to why she would take on the name Skywalker. But they didn't. And Ben, instead of becoming the redemptive hero, ends up perishing. all his character development gone. A real shame. Real shame. Do you ever read the Star Wars books or comics? A couple of them. Not a ton. My cousin used to do that a whole lot. And I would look at his books on a regular basis. And that was some of the most I spent reading that sort of stuff. Now, I read a lot of the, primarily a lot of the books I read were things like the histories of Star Wars and a lot of the encyclopedias. But I also really dove into a lot of the lore books, where it would help to expand upon lore. I didn't read a whole lot of the story ones, where it's like, written like a novel. I did read a couple of those things, but it wasn't much. There is some videos that came out a couple of years ago. They were it was based upon the Star Wars lore, and it was trying to show how the Sith and the Jedi had their war begin and where things had gone. And it was genius. I really enjoyed it. I watched that multiple times, trying to get as much as I could out of it, and it made me want to play a lot of the games that were out at the time, but I didn't have the finances for it, so I kind of skipped on that sort of stuff. There's a lot of things that Disney did well. A lot of them are in their visual effects. Some of their visual effects are really, really well done. But there's a couple of things that are lore elements that actually panned out pretty well. Some of it had to do with the world building that they were doing in all of their series. Some worlds were really well put together, others not so much. But for the most part, it was kind of like a 1-for-1, one negative to one positive. And there's a couple of those that, as I watched it, I got hopeful, and then we come to the end, and a lot of the build-up again would kind of fall apart, and I would get frustrated with it, because no, you guys had a perfect setup and you threw it away. That's the story of Disney. They had people that knew what they were doing, and they had good build-up, and then somebody somewhere along the line decided to throw it all away. There was a Star Wars product that I saw when I was growing up. And it kind of mentioned, well, it kind of showcased how to make a good quality Star Wars product. I kind of feel like a lot of the stuff in the between the 80s and the 90s was actually really good. They understood the world of Star Wars, and people that did offshoots or games or whatnot understood the world that had been built. We get to the prequels, and you get all excited because Star Wars is being revamped, prepared for the next generation. And then something happened. The Clone Wars TV show. At which point, there were elements of the story that had already been established in the movies and that had been directly rejected when it came to the TV show. And George Lucas tried to argue it away, saying, well, they're kind of doing their own thing. I mostly focus on the movies. I'm not going to stress about the stuff that they're doing. Think of it more like the fairy tales they would tell each other about what was happening on the front. And that was how he kind of reasoned what was going on and why there would be differences. Some of those lore elements, though, would come back to really cause some problems later on. One of them was the Mandalorians. The Mandalorians in film is very different than what the TV show built up, and thus created consequences for the future. And it made things like the dark saber and whatnot. It's like George Lucas wouldn't have made that sort of stuff. He was focused primarily on the Jedi, but there's a lot of things about the Mandalorians. It's like, why is it set up like this? Who's kind of like cross-referencing about whether or not the stuff is actually lore accurate? And then I found out later on that they did it just kind of without George Lucas's approval. They would get his approval on some things, and then other times they would try and push, trying to break kind of his resistance to it, so that he would finally say, yeah, sure, give it the green light. Remember, the people that made the Clone Wars TV show are some of the people that have sabotaged a lot of the stuff in Disney. Well, if you believe that Disney has been sabotaged. If you don't believe that, then you won't see it that way. And at which point, that's fine. That is your perspective on that. But if you do have a problem with the current direction of Disney Star Wars, then you'll have to look back to where the root problem was, and it was the Clone Wars TV show. There's elements of that show that I know that people really, really enjoyed. My brother really enjoyed a lot of the stuff, but he also admitted that there was a lot of stuff that really didn't make sense. But as in terms of just pure fun and enjoyment, good storytelling, it was definitely there, but it lacked the lore. And I'm a lore enthusiast. I like things to be consistent. I don't like things that kind of upset the boat, that cause you to have to kind of relearn a lot of the lore, and kind of makes it for weird surprises. Think about it in terms of Lord of the Rings. Let me give you an example of this. Let's say, for example, that there is a scene that happens at the end of one of a spin-off series. They make a story about the Rohirrim, and then at the very end, you see a scroll being opened, and it mentions that there wasn't just one ring to rule them all. There was a twin, and the twin was Sauron's backup plan, and somebody stole it. And so Sauron never got a chance to fully infuse it all with his power. You've just upset the lore. You've just turned around the entire narrative of the trilogy. So, it is something to just remember and consider. There might be an issue with Castercraft. I just entered it for the first time, and when I clicked on Learn More in Silverado, I was logged in as you. That's weird. In every other tab, I get logged in into, but not for this one. Learn more. Let me do an experiment. Much appreciated. Yeah, I got that experiment. You know, that is the first time that somebody has actually checked. And so that is actually really helpful, because that means that there is a vulnerability. And that means I need to check that. Castercraft.net, but the amount is way different. Learn more. Learn more. Looks like I'm probably gonna have to do some hunting. Try and figure out what was going on. Clicked on. Okay, let's do Silverado. All right, so help walk me through this. So right here is one area. Homepage. Okay, let's go to Silverado. Okay. Let's go to, let's actually exit out of here. There we go. Go to Learn More, and I'm going to guess it's probably about, no? How about this? No. Castercraft's mission. No. Let me pull up something on my end, the admin side. That might have been from the recent update. Let me take a look at this. It's on the homepage. Okay, so we're on the homepage. Just scroll down to Silverado. Oh, wait a minute. Aha! Much appreciated. You're very helpful. You have found a vulnerability, and I know exactly how this happened. Thank you very, very much. All right. Let me, right here, right now, make the correction. You know, I kind of wonder what would happen if I go over here now. If I go back to redeemables, it takes me out. Okay, so if I go back in here, let's go back to Castercraft. It takes me out. Got it. All right, file manager. I know what this is. Go into Castercraft. That would be a leftover remnant of a bug. So, you know, I've actually been having problems with that page before. And it suddenly works everywhere else, I think. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, let me take a look at this. Scroll down. Where is that line of code? Welcome to Eldorado. Scroll down, scroll down. Okay. Go back here. Golly, that is a good catch. Now, thankfully, that's not going to do anything other than just show that, you know, that side of it. Because there is a lock that is put on every page. So unless it is breaking on other pages, that's where it starts to become a problem. If it's happening on that one page, then it's in the clear. But it does raise a question about how that happens. Of which, I'm guessing it had to do with an update right here. Come on. Where is that page? Come back here for a moment. Oh, that was the wrong area. Here we go. User menu. All right. Let's get something a little bit more lively in the background while I go about fixing this. Enjoy the music, folks. Okay, I think a fix has been applied. So, that was very helpful. So I have a process of trying to trap bots. And there was a hole in the way that I try and trap bots. So, that is what appears to have happened. I'm going to try this once more on an incognito page again. I just tried it on one platform, but I'm going to try it on a different one in order to double check this one last time. Okay, so that area is good. Let's try that. Haha, it kicks it out. Perfect. Okay. Jersey, it would be very helpful if you could give that another try. That now is an area of that I need to try and harden up. That was part. So here's how my account got showed there. Because in order to try and trap the bots, I was actually testing it as if I was a bot, and that required me to access it as an admin. So thus, it was skipping a security protocol. So thus it was trying to preview it as me to try and get through the bot catch. Ah, my goodness. That was so simple. That's the problem with coding. You can spend time making tens of thousands of lines of code in two areas can cause a glitch. On that note, I'm going to take a brief moment to get myself a little bit more water. I will be right back. Emergency averted. Anyway, continue listening to this jazzy Mario music until then. All right, we're back at it. You know, that reminds me, when I was a couple years back, there was an experiment that was being done in order to try and create an area where fellow creators could all contribute to the same website. It was a really interesting idea, and we got in the process of trying to develop it. And there was one hurdle that arose that prevented us from being able to actually go forward with the idea. The platform that we wanted to try and operate on refused to have us. And so rather than give us the ability to try and argue our case, they just said, nope, that's it. We don't want this. And so in a moment, the whole concept was gutted. And we never really got a true understanding, a true bit of information as to why it had been that way. Because we actually had like a top-notch web developer that had been scheduled to come in and help us achieve that. The web developer got cold feet after the reject, and so thus it never came to pass. That's when I started looking into other platforms like Instagram to try and do the same sort of thing, and it never could quite fulfill kind of the dream. So finally, a couple of years ago, I was like, I'm going to tinker on it myself. And so it's been a learning process. There was a moment when I finally got a chance to showcase something. And it did not go so well. The code was operational, but the platform that was being previewed on, I had not anticipated. Of which mobile, for example, for that website still doesn't entirely work. It does work, it's just not refined yet. And so I'm in the process of trying to figure that out. But there was another thing that I encountered a couple of years back, and it was the problem of the fact that Chrome and Firefox operate in totally different ways at times. And I had built it for Chrome and had not built it for the Firefox concept. Well, afterwards I found out if you build it for Firefox, you're basically golden. If you can do that, then Chrome, on the other hand, will just immediately start working. Coding adventures. All right, so I'm not going to spend much more time on this arm right here. I just want to add a little bit of lighting, and then we'll move on to making more items out in this field of junk.
Questa galassia è piena di api. Diventerò un'ape per diventare come loro.
All right, what other pieces of junk can we put out here? How about...
Forse, come ape, anch'io posso trovare l'amore.
let's put a game console out there.
Sono un'ape.
Maybe a Game Boy. Let's go with an old-fashioned Game Boy.
Sono un'ape. Niente più principesse, niente più funghi, niente più Luigi, solo l'alveare.
Ah. Okay. I just realized I messed up that. So tomorrow I need to double check that piece of code because now it logged me out. Oh, golly. Well, learn now while it is still young, and that way it'll be nice and solidified
Sono un'ape.
when time has passed. You know, there's a Star Wars game that I really, really enjoyed growing up. It was the Star Wars Episode 1 adventure game. There was a lot of potential with that. And for me, that was a great experience getting to play that. And I really came to appreciate a lot of the kind of side stories in Star Wars lore. And so when I first saw that there was the opportunity to kind of see some of these lore things, some of these side stories and lore come to the big screen, so to speak, with what Disney was doing, I really started wondering if they were going to grab some of the stories that had been done in the games. And it would have been actually a really good idea if they had. They still might, honestly. Do you ever use rulers and measuring tools in Clip Studio Paint? And that big one on the left, what's that used for? That big one on the left. Oh, you mean this ruler over here? Let's see here. Is it this one right here? The ruler? The ruler's just like kind of a backup. It doesn't actually get used a whole lot. I use it if I'm like trying to line up to a certain pixel, but honestly, it really doesn't serve much purpose these days. It used to be much more important when you were trying to line things up for print. Not really beneficial now, because I have it on the top too. You can't really see it from that angle. But one of the things I will use is the perspective tool. Now there is a really nice perspective tool here in Clip Paint Studio, but it's got problems, and so you have to use it just right, otherwise it glitches out on you. This is an interesting item. When I was working in my first art program, I was using the ruler all the time. The ruler was the only way that you could make artwork for let's see here. Activities, here we go. Let's go over to DK now. Okay. So, what I used the ruler for was for making sure that art was lined up in as well as animation. Because I was working in the program PowerPoint. I could not afford Photoshop. I could not afford InDesign. I couldn't afford Clip Paint Studio. I was using PowerPoint for my very first animations, for my very first pieces of digital art. Not even Microsoft Paint. I didn't even really know about that tool. All I had access to was and that I knew that I had access to was PowerPoint. So you can guess what sort of high quality animations I was making on that. Kind of pitiful. But you always need somewhere to start from. And for me, it actually was pretty decent. I got to learn how to make art in a different way than what the average person got to. do. And one of the things I learned was some of the challenges of operating with dimension. And because PowerPoint is all about kind of scale on a canvas. So I got to learn about canvas and measurements. When I went over to Photoshop, I actually started using that quite a bit. When I went to InDesign, it helped out tremendously for getting to adapt to that program too. Just because it's a program that isn't designated as an art tool doesn't mean that it's necessarily incapable of being an art tool. Sometimes it just takes the creativity of your brain to be able to overcome it. Let's have a little red light over here to show that's operational. This is an interesting thing. All right, let's add some highlights here. No, not that. I want the... No, not that. It's this. There. A little bit of light. Just a tad bit. So you see that is operational. Maybe a few more trinkets around here. I want to add in an astromech into this pile. No, not this pile. I'll send it into this pile over here. He'll be right there. But in this pile, what else? Let's have a lightsaber hilt right here. Is this an Easter egg? Yes, everything back here is an Easter egg of some kind, or it's trinkets. Like this right here is Darth Vader's chess piece. This right here is a Game Boy. Right here, some sort of droid. No real description as what. This right here is, well, when I was making it, is supposed to be a Kamino dart. Now, I did not do that very well, but over here, we got this character, the character that tortures droids. And so he's getting his nose picked right here. I like throwing Easter eggs around here. So if there's like an Easter egg there, like, oh, this would be really funny for someone who's a Star Wars lore enthusiast, feel free to mention it. We're going to throw an astromech on the other side. So there's also room over there. Oh, wait a minute. I have to be on another layer for this one. Yeah, here we go. Layer right here. And let's change these layers to being green, if it's going to be this stuff here. Right. This is also green. There we go. So that way I can come back and know immediately where it is that I'm working. All right. Maybe a lightsaber hilt. Maybe Let's. Oh! I know. Aha! Here we go. All right. Only real lore enthusiasts are going to recognize this one. I'm going to build it a little bit bigger so that way you can shrink it down. A Star Wars game I played as well when I was in college was Star Wars Force Unleashed. Now, I actually really enjoyed that game. Now, it's not very lore accurate, and I do understand that, but it introduced a lot of great lore ideas into there that I at least was willing to kind of forgive, and because I thought that they were being used pretty well. Force Unleashed 2, not so much, but Force Unleashed 1 was pretty clever. I played that game through twice. It was my roommate's console, and he rarely ever played games on it. And so he said I was allowed to play it whenever I wanted. And it was the first time I ever had a console, so to speak. And so I played Force Unleashed through twice. I played Uncharted, the original game, and played that through twice. And played Civilization 5, I believe. No, it was 4, because 5 would come out a couple years later. So I do have kind of an understanding. You can have lore elements that is against what the films have set up, but it should always have respect, and that's how I kind of operate. I want things to have respect, regardless of what the story is about, whether or not it's actually lore accurate. I want it to be respectful. When I was growing up, I was not allowed to watch Star Wars. I was too young. And I do believe that there is a time and place for someone to watch stories like that. Because I think if you watch it too early, you do become a little too... it becomes too trivial, and the weight of it would be more impactful if you saw it as an adult. Now, that's one of the stories, though, that was really hard to wait to see. And I had to wait probably, I believe it was until the age of 15. Stand by. Someone was shouting outside, so I had to close the window. So I saw Star Wars the final Star Wars film by the age of 15. Did I wait too long for it? Maybe. But you know what? I still appreciate the story. And until then, I had video games that actually allowed me to kind of appreciate the story until then. So I was quite familiar with a lot of the story elements. Now, that kind of ruined it as well for me. I didn't get a chance to have kind of the impact of some of those story elements. Like when Darth Vader says, "Luke, I'm your father." I didn't get the same weight as the people who first saw that in theaters. It's kind of hard to avoid that nowadays. Everyone references it. How detailed sketches should I do for my drawings? Should I plan folds in clothing and stuff like that from the start, or leave it for the outlining process? Good question. As time has gone on, I have done less and less details in the sketch. And I can safely say, I think that there's the argument to avoid doing more than just simple roughs for your sketch. I'll do an example once I finish this part right here, because it's actually a very interesting concept, and it's one that I'm still trying to refine and get better at. All right, almost done with this part right here. There we go. Is the necklace that Darth Vader or Anakin gives to Padme. All right, so let me do the sketch for you once I rescale this right here. All right, let's save this and go over to another file to do this experiment, okay? So you want to draw clothing on your character, in that example, about the folds. So let's get this right here. Let's start off with, let me see here. Let's draw a kind of Jedi attire, since we're already doing something Star Wars related. I'm going to be making a character from start to finish. It'll be a relatively fast process here, but this will help. So let's just do the upper body. Let's do a torso and the arms. We're not even going to do hands. We're just going to do torso and arms. Let me pull my reference material. I'm going to go based off of one of Count Dooku's sort of attires. Notice how rough this is and how I'm mostly just trying to get the silhouette sort of design for the time being. Because once you have the silhouette, it helps you to develop your look. So then I turn this one down and add another layer and I start building it up even further. Giving a bit of a rib cage for this. Let's correct the shoulders here. And his shoulders are a little bit wider. I think it's because of his attire. And he doesn't have any sort of really visible muscle. He's very elegant. So we're going to make sure to maintain that right here. That needs to come in a little bit closer. And he does taper off a bit here. And that's because he's got a belt right here. Okay. Now, we turn the visibility on that one down a little bit. So right now you see that we're refining it slowly but surely. Now we come to the actual sketch. So we're going to change the color on this one. And we're lowering the brush size a bit. And right now I'm just trying to bring in some details right now. Notice what I'm doing right here. I'm trying to figure out the style of his clothing on this pass. I'm not having to sketch over absolutely everything right away. I'm mostly just trying to figure out the sort of look and feel that I want for this. Okay, now let's break this down. This is how it started. A very light silhouette. Adding in some form, correcting the shape. Now we're going in with the general details. I've added in a couple of crease marks where I kind of want there to be folds. I've gone where I want the shoulders to kind of be set apart. I have the way that the clothing is going to be designed. I haven't gone to very high detail. This is all rough. So now I can come in and I can go in and I can start actually trying to draw out what this attire is going to look like. I can have like some maybe extra details in the clothing right here, but this is something I'm doing on the actual line work. I can be able to correct this later on. Now, I used to draw everything like this, and sometimes I still do, but I don't have the need for it as much anymore. So that's how I go about doing that. I always skip the first two parts you made and go straight to sketch. Yes, that is that's a mistake I made over and over again. When I used to draw, I used to do this. I used to say, okay, I'm going to have my character like this. Okay, we have the face right there. Okay, I'm going to keep refining. Oh, I'm going to erase this right here. Oh, I want to have a bit of a nose right here, so I'm going to remove that and maybe do this. This does work, but it takes a lot more effort to try and figure this out than if you're doing general shapes especially when you're trying to do the full character. When you're doing like a face, that's not as big of an issue. But it's when you start doing a full character that it becomes a bigger issue. Kind of a cute character there. There, you got a little mouse right there. But anyway, hopefully that helps. That's what I did for the droid. The droid started out as a very rough sketch, and I slowly added detail. When I came to the final line artwork, a lot of it did get added along the way. Hopefully it made enough sense. And now you have a chance to start experimenting with that new technique. Is it easier for you to draw humans or animals? Very good question there. Very observant, because I actually do very well with four-legged animals. Not always. I don't draw them as much as humans, which means that I have actually lost a lot of my skill. I do really well with birds. I do really well with mammals. When it comes to humans, I struggle. I've always struggled, and I'm getting better, but I'm nowhere near as good of quality as I want to be. There's a lot of room for improvement, and human beings take a whole lot of time to get right. Just have to be ready to have to deal with multiple passes. Right here, where I did the different layers right here, for a human character, I will do about 4 or 5 different layers of detail before I finally get the design right. If I'm doing an animal, I have to do it maybe 1 layer, maybe 2, but I can be able to skip most of the steps. But yeah, it's a real challenge. We'll just put it that way. There are some tricks and some cheats that people can do to get around some of those challenges. But you really shouldn't try and get around those with cheats just yet until you understand the basics. Then you can start, expanding and experimenting with and taking shortcuts. But you don't take shortcuts when you're still in the learning process. And I technically count myself as still in the learning process. So there's a lot of techniques I will not do just because I don't feel like I'm ready for it. All right, let's put in some more gears back here, some sort of machinery. Let's go with Star Wars junk. Buy junk for very low prices. Oh, look at that. That reminds me of the trash worlds in Star Wars. There's some really clever things that they did with that. Right. Oh, here we go. A joint that's sticking up. By the way, folks, on Castercraft, one of the first written story is almost done. One of the editors just got back with me and said that they're done, and that means I am just waiting on the second one, and then I send it off to the next group of people, which will go a bit faster, and then it will finally come out. This is a very long learning process for me. I've been trying to get the hang of it. I'm trying to juggle a lot of things at once. And a couple years ago, I actually was working with some folks that made the process a lot easier because we were working as a team. I'm not working with a team this time, and it's been educational. I've learned the hard way what it's like to have to do everything from ground zero. And as we saw earlier tonight, there's still a couple things that I mess up along the way, things I need to keep perfecting and getting better at. But it is something where I'm getting very close to the first project coming out, and I'm excited about that, because then that means I can move on to the next project, which has some really neat potential. I am going to be doing some commissions as well. There's a couple of things that I'm willing to hire folks for. I don't know what that's going to be just yet. I kind of have to wait and see what sort of interest there is when it actually comes about. But I want to try and work with folks that can do artwork and that have a passion for it, but can't really seem to find anywhere to practice and get their skills, get their skills seen. That's the real thing. Trying to get your skills seen these days is actually very difficult. I had someone give me a shout out a couple of years back, and it went tolerably well. But I still wouldn't have gotten even half the distance that I've gotten now if it wasn't for him giving that shout out, even though things kind of ended in a bad way. I'm still grateful for the opportunity that came along. I want to try and do some of the same sort of things. It'll just be a little bit nicer, because I learned the hard way from him about what not to do. Oh, I know I could put out here. Okay, so throughout the throughout this intro, I have put in Alaska references. It's been my it's kind of like how some people will put a rubber ducky in every scene. For me, I put Alaska references, and sometimes they'll say like Alaska spring water, and it's coming from a pipe into somewhere. There's other times where it'll mention like Alaska's the best state in the world. It's kind of gimmick thing. So because my name is Alaska Man Jeff, I've been leaning into that. I have tried to put other things around, but it never quite connected as well as having the Alaska things, because it kind of gets comical for folks to see that. When I did the Pokemon intro, that's something I put in the background as well. So I mentioned that it was the Alaska edition. And the map that was animated on, if folks remember that, the map actually was a map of Alaska. Actually, I think I still have that image right here. Let me see here. I do keep all my files, but the question is, do I keep it nice and organized? That's the thing. Okay. Yep, here it is. The map of Alaska in Pokemon. Well, at least South Central. So we have right here, the story began down here, which is happening in Seward. So it's actually structured to look somewhat like Seward. And then you have the mountain passes and the forests. And there's people out here that got fishing along this area. And I put a lot of effort into this, even though nobody really knew what it was. Got the pass over to Whittier. Got Girdwood right up here. And it's got snowy area up here for all the skiing that takes place. We have Anchorage over here. And come up here, and this right here is Eagle River. And the nature center that's back here. And by the way, the gym is actually right where there is actually a gym right there. And the same thing down here. Come up here, this is Palmer. There's a lot of animals out here. There's a lot of farmland. Come down to Wasilla, there's lakes, and there's all sorts of properties being built. There's gardens. Come up here, and you come up to Talkeetna, which is Hippieville here in Alaska. There's a lot of stuff that I put into this map that never really got seen. But it was a pretty fun thing to try and throw in an Easter egg of the map that was being in the Alaska edition of Pokemon, actually having South Central Alaska. Do you live near the coast or more inland? So yeah, I'm along the coast for the most part. You have to remember the coastline around here is kind of further away for the most part. So if I was to let me pull up actually Google Earth here for a moment, because I want you to realize how big this area is. Okay. Google Earth. Let's go down to Kenai. Just let me show you this right here. Actually, first, before we do that, let's grab a state that people are probably more familiar with. Let's come down to Massachusetts, okay? So right here, Massachusetts is... let me get rid of road preview. Here we go. Massachusetts, from the coastline inland, is 123 miles to the other side of the state. 123 miles. That is the size of Massachusetts. Let's come up here and take a look at Kenai. So, from Kenai to Cooper. Let's see here, clear. Kenai to Cooper Landing is 50 miles, half the length of Massachusetts. This is a very small area. This is basically the length of distance people live all along this area, and these are all fishermen along this entire stretch. To travel down there, if you're coming from Anchorage, you have to travel over to Whittier, which is 40 miles. Then you have to travel down, which is another 40 miles. Then you have to travel 50 miles to the coast. And that's how you go fishing. Because you can't quite fish in this area. You have to fish down here. So, this whole area right here is the size of many states. Massachusetts is the equivalent of the Kenai Peninsula. Look how big this state is. And this is just a small little corner here. If you cut Texas in half, we would be still the largest state. Sorry, if you cut Alaska in half, we would be the first and second largest state. That's how big we are. Wow, my whole country is around 400 by 400 miles. What is the population in Alaska? Not very big. I will say that. We are around 700, 800,000. It is growing very, very slowly. If Canada were to, in theory, join the U.S., which I know it's no one knows if it's going to happen or not, but if they did, Alaska would grow really fast because we would have a land bridge. We don't have a land bridge to the rest of the country, so we're like an island, and so trying to get people to want to come up here is kind of hard. Now, in terms of your country, Jersey, for the now I'm trying to remember when I was traveling over in Europe. There's not a lot of hills in your country, is there? Mostly no, but we have sea and mountains. Okay, I forgot about the fact that you would have mountains over there. Flatlands mostly. See, that's what I was kind of remembering. I've only driven through your country once, and I was mostly in the flatlands. I do miss traveling in Europe. Spent a lot of years over there. I got to see many places, and came back to the U.S. and kind of felt I missed that opportunity to get to travel and see places like that. Never went outside of Europe. Well, that's understandable. There are people here in the U.S. who have never traveled more than 10 miles. Those people are in Ohio. Wish I could visit Vietnam or Venezuela. Love the climate and flora. You know, personally speaking, from somebody who has been warned by travelers and who have been to both those places, be very careful if you ever do end up going there. Those places have some reputations, both of them. You know, I actually know a couple of people from Venezuela. They escaped and had they came very close to being executed. We'll put it that way. I know some people who came from Vietnam, and actually I got to meet somebody from Vietnam just recently. It's a country that has its problems, but they also have a lot of people that are very kind and some very genuine people too. Vietnam's an interesting place. they've had to go through terrible, terrible things. But they came out of it stronger in many ways. Their people didn't lose their heart, even though their country did. The people themselves, a lot of them recovered. I had a good friend who was from Vietnam, and she had a fascinating story. Now, this is a story I've been telling for years now because it took me so much by surprise, and it kind of summed up a lot of her past in many ways. So she came up to the table that me and a couple of other folks were sitting at, and she said, "What is wrong with your country?" We're like, "What are you referring to?" She turned around and pointed to the television and said, "Right there, see right there." And on there was an advertisement for a movie. It was very dark, it was demonic, and it was, I want to say it was like The Exorcist or something like that. It looked, or something along those lines. It looked very disturbing. And she said, "Why are you all so obsessed with evil?" It's like, well, we're not really obsessed with evil, but we couldn't reason with her. She was convinced that we were. And so we sat down, and we all sat down there and just dialogued about it. And she said something very profound. She went into the detail of what it was like for her to grow up. She said, when we were growing up in Vietnam, we didn't know if we would live till the morning. We didn't know if a war was going to break out. We didn't know if disease was going to get us. We didn't know if we were going to be trafficked. We had no idea what the future was going to hold. And every night we went to bed scared. Well, our parents would come in and they would tell us stories, fairy tales, about a world that was perfect, a place where evil actually was punished, a place where good triumphed. Over here in America, you seem obsessed with evil. You seem obsessed with death. She said, over in Vietnam, we lived in hell and we dreamed of heaven. You all live in heaven, meaning that we live in a paradise full of good food and safety, and we dream of hell. That has always stuck with me. I don't even know if she realized how profound her statement was. The years have passed, and I really do think that she was onto something. There's a lot of us in this world. We feel no fear. We feel no real concern. We've never had to deal with pain and suffering, and we seem to have a fascination with evil. We have an obsession with things that are dark and terrifying or wicked. We live in heaven, like she said, and we dream of hell. Vietnamese woman with no like deep philosophical theological background came to that conclusion on her own. Very, very smart and very observant too. Still fascinates me. But that's always stuck with me, and I hope to be able to kind of make products that have hope, kind of like what she was talking about, that has this encouragement for the future and say, you know what, it may be a dark day today, but it will get better in the future if we strive for it. Okay, what else can we add into the scene? You know, I actually do have the ability to reach out to her again. I actually have her contact information. I need to follow up and see how she's doing. I think that if I remember right, she went back to Vietnam many years ago. Kind of curious how life is for them over there. We have a lot of Vietnamese people in my country. I really love them and their cuisine. Most came here because our country has good relations, and since we even helped them during the Civil War, many migrated, studied, and started family businesses to send money back home and bring their families. Or at least that's a story of one of my Vietnamese friends. Indeed. You know, I actually got to meet somebody at my church recently. This is actually a very important one here. Okay. Now this is an important one. I'm not going to zoom in because this is YouTube, all right? But it's pretty easy to know who this is. All right. If you know who this girl is, we got to meet her just a couple of months ago, actually. She is now grown up, and she has had to deal with horrible burns that she got treated here in the U.S. She actually lives in Alaska, or at least for a good portion of her time. She actually lives in the state. I was like, wow, I remember reading about you in history books, and here you are in Alaska. Fascinating story, by the way. I heard many Vietnamese went to the U.S. During the Civil War, but from the opposite side of the Civil War. We had a whole lot of people that evacuated over here because it was southern Vietnam when it fell. A lot of them came over here. There was an operation to try and get out as many people as possible, and it's really unfortunate how many people got hurt in that conflict. It's kind of the reminder of that conflict affects everybody, and you don't really know how it's going to pan out until much later. Conflicts are going to happen across the world throughout history. You're not going to be able to stop them, but you have the chance to try and make a difference, to be able to help out those that you can. It's funny how politics change all the time. Just 40 years ago, our countries were enemies, and now it's the total opposite. Even the people didn't change on both sides. Indeed. Indeed. Suffering is a really hard thing to have to go through. Sometimes when suffering happens, it causes us to become cold and heartless. I kind of feel like that's the natural way that things kind of seem to happen when conflict arises. It's like there was a story I remember hearing about a soldier who was face to face with the enemy. He had the drop on him. He had the ability to fire. And he held his gun and he was like, I don't want to do this. He had no problem fighting everyone else up until that point. And then for whatever reason, there's this gut feeling in him. Don't shoot. And the other person just stood there. And eventually they parted ways. The guy found out years and years later who that guy was. And they actually got to meet. And they ended up becoming really, really good friends. And it was a split moment when all that could have turned south. That's one thing you learn in history, is that many times a nation will have to demonize somebody in order to demonize people in order to kind of get people energized to go out and have conflict. If you want to maintain peace, maintain open dialogue, and you will find a lot of opportunities to try and mend your differences. It doesn't always work, and having come from a military background, a military family background, I can definitely say that there's a lot of times you have good intentions and the enemy doesn't. And you don't really know where they're going to stand until much later. But it's your duty to try and be a voice of reason and a voice of kindness, regardless. We are not the leaders of the world. We don't get to decide what sort of conflicts are going to happen. We do have the ability, though, to make decisions about whether or not we are going to abandon our heart and soul in a conflict. And who knows? You may actually come across somebody someday that needs mercy, even though your country doesn't want to show mercy. You know, I got to meet a couple of Chinese students years ago. They were nice folks. But you know what was interesting was that they mentioned about some of the things that they struggled with their country. And they mentioned how they felt like they were prisoners. One of them mentioned about how he was being threatened and how he had to go back home. Otherwise, bad things could happen to his family. I don't know whatever happened to him. He was a good fella, honestly, and I wish nothing but the best for him and his family and friends. But I have no idea what happened to him. Maybe I'll find out one day. But I still remember him just mentioning about how he felt like he was a prisoner. I don't know what that feeling is like, personally, but there are many people across this world who have felt that. Many people who really just want to live peaceful, calm lives. And society doesn't necessarily always give us that. But we do have a choice. We have a choice to be merciful and kind to those in our community, to help make a difference there. We may not be able to make the difference globally, but we can definitely help out those in our neighborhoods. All right, we're going to finish this block right here, and we're going to actually have to call it an evening because it is 1 and I have work in the morning. Oh, wrong side. Here we go. All right, well, we got some good progress here. The scene looks a lot more, This is like the perfect time to end because the stream is cutting in and out. Oh, golly. All right, well, let me see here. Let me refresh things and make sure everything is operational, and then we'll begin the send-off. It doesn't look like we'll be raiding anyone tonight. But if you are on one of the platforms that allows you to like or dislike, would you consider doing so? It'd be much appreciated. It helps me to know whether or not you are flesh and blood. Because, you know, bots, they don't tend to like or dislike. But anyway, much appreciated. And if you ever get an interest in wanting to if you ever feel comfortable just mentioning, like, hey, we're here, we're lurking, I welcome that too. That way I have a name to be able to put to some of the people out there. I do think and pray about you guys on a regular basis, and so that way it just helps me to remember that. Anyway, we'll be calling it there. Thanks, folks, for coming by. No matter what happens, be civil to one another. And we will see you next time, whenever that is. We're going to be doing some more of this tomorrow, and I'm going to try and make sure to do this every day for this week. We're going to give this a try. It's going to be the most streaming in a week that I have done in a long, long time. Until then, folks, have a very pleasant evening.